When a billionaire CEO fired a black waitress for correcting his business presentation, he thought he was removing an annoyance. What he didn't know was that the simple waitress held 3 MIT degrees and had just saved his company from a $50 million lawsuit. And his own mother was about to reveal a secret that would change everything. The crystal chandeliers of the Meridian Grand Hotel cast dancing shadows across the mahogany tables, where Silicon Valley's elite gathered for their monthly power breakfast. The air smelled of French roast coffee and money. That distinct mixture of expensive cologne, leather portfolios, and unchecked ambition that only exists in rooms where billion-dollar deals are sketched on napkins. Angela Mitchell moved between the tables with practiced invisibility, her movements fluid as water, silent as shadow. For 18 months, she had served these titans of industry their eggs, Benedict, and artisanal toast, refilled their cups with precision timing, and listened to their conversations with the careful attention of someone who had learned that being overlooked was sometimes the greatest advantage of all. No, one knew that the woman in the crisp white shirt and black apron had once stood before the United Nations, presenting her breakthrough in quantum computing architecture. No one even noticed how her fingers would unconsciously trace equations on her serving tray when she heard the tech moguls butcher basic programming concepts over their morning meetings. But when Marcus Chen, the 32-year-old billionaire CEO of Nextech Industries, began presenting his new blockchain integration model to a table of investors, Angela's trained ear caught something that made her freeze mid-pour. The numbers were wrong, catastrophically wrong. The kind of wrong that wouldn't just tank a presentation, it would trigger an SEC investigation. She watched as Chen's laser pointer danced across his tablet screen, highlighting projections that violated 3 federal compliance regulations. The investors nodded, impressed by the astronomical returns he was promising. Angela's hand trembled slightly as she set down the coffee pot. She had 2 choices: stay silent and watch a room full of people lose millions while Chen's company imploded, or speak up and risk everything she had carefully built in her quiet life. What they didn't know was that Angela Mitchell had written the original framework Chen was bastardizing. 5 years ago, in a MIT lab, before life had forced her to trade algorithms for aprons, and with just 7 words whispered at the wrong moment, she was about to shatter the careful anonymity she had cultivated and set in motion a chain of events that would expose not just her past, but a connection between her and the Chen family that no one, not even Marcus, knew existed. Because sometimes the most powerful person in the room isn't sitting at the table. Sometimes she's the one refilling the water glasses, watching, waiting, and knowing exactly when the emperor has no clothes. The moment Angela opened her mouth to speak, the universe seemed to hold its breath. Marcus Chen was about to learn that respect isn't determined by the size of your bank account or the prestige of your title. And his mother, Victoria Chen, watching from the hotel's entrance with tears in her eyes, was about to reveal why she had been secretly paying for Angela's mother's cancer treatment for the past 2 years. But before we dive into what happened when Angela finally spoke up, I need to ask you something. If you've ever felt invisible, overlooked, or underestimated despite your talents, hit that subscribe button right now. This channel tells the stories of everyday heroes who remind us that brilliance comes in all packages, and dignity isn't determined by job titles. Rate this story from 0 to 10 in the comments below. How many of you have wanted to correct someone in power but held your tongue? And if you've ever had a moment where you chose to speak truth to power, share it with our community. We read every single comment, and the best stories might be featured in our next video. Don't just watch. Become part of our family of 2 million subscribers who believe that every person deserves respect, regardless of their current circumstances. Angela Mitchell had worked at the Meridian Grand Hotel for exactly 18 months and 4 days. Every morning, she arrived at 5:30 a.m., 30 minutes before her shift, to review the day's reservation list. She knew that Mr. Harrison took his coffee with oat milk, not almond. She knew that Mrs. Rodriguez was allergic to shellfish, despite it not being in the system. She knew that the venture capitalists from Sequoia preferred the corner booth because the acoustics made their conversations harder to overhear. The tech titans walked by her as if she were part of the furniture, a functional piece of the environment that existed solely to facilitate their comfort. Marcus Chen was the worst of them. He had a habit of snapping his fingers when he wanted service, never making eye contact, referring to her only as "you there." On the rare occasions he acknowledged her existence at all. But Angela watched. She always watched. She had learned that invisibility was a kind of superpower. When people didn't see you as a threat, or even as a full person, they revealed themselves in ways they never would otherwise. She had witnessed hostile takeovers planned over mimosas, affairs confirmed through careless phone calls, and illegal stock tips passed as casually as the salt shaker. On that particular Thursday morning, Angela heard something that made her hand pause midway through wiping down table 7. Chen was explaining his new blockchain integration to a group of investors, his voice carrying that particular tone of confident authority that came from never being challenged. "The beauty of our system," Chen said, manipulating his holographic display with practiced flair, "is that it bypasses the traditional SEC reporting requirements through a proprietary loophole we've discovered. We can guarantee 340% returns in the first quarter alone." Angela moved closer, refilling water glasses at the adjacent table. Those words weren't foreign to her. She had written a paper on blockchain compliance at MIT, specifically addressing the kind of loophole Chen was describing. It didn't exist. What he was proposing was securities fraud, dressed up in enough technical jargon to fool anyone who didn't have deep expertise in both distributed ledger technology and federal financial regulations. She found herself at their table, coffee pot in hand. Chen was deep in his presentation, his laser pointer highlighting a series of equations that made her stomach turn. He had taken legitimate blockchain architecture, she recognized with a sick feeling, as being based on her own published work, and corrupted it into something that would not only fail but take down everyone who invested in it. Without thinking, she whispered, "Your hash rate calculations are off by a factor of 12. The words had barely left her mouth when she realized what she'd done. The entire table fell silent. Marcus Chen's head swiveled toward her like a predator catching sight of prey. "Excuse me?" His voice was ice. Angela straightened, her training in maintaining composure during her MIT thesis defense suddenly flooding back. "The hash rate calculations in your blockchain model. They're wrong. What you're proposing would require more processing power than currently exists in all of North America combined." Chen's face flushed red. The investors shifted uncomfortably. One of them, an older man with silver hair, leaned forward with interest. But Chen's hand slammed down on the table. "Are you seriously standing there, as a waitress, trying to correct me on blockchain technology?" He laughed, but it was sharp, meant to cut. "This is a $15 billion presentation, and you're worried about coffee and hash rates? Do you even know what a hash rate is? Or did you just overhear that term while serving people who actually matter?" Angela's grip on the coffee pot tightened, but her voice remained steady. "A hash rate is the speed at which a compute is completing an operation in the cryptocurrency code. More specifically, it's the number of times per second a hash function can be computed on a given piece of hardware. Your model assumes a linear scaling that ignores the exponential increase in difficulty as the network grows." Dead silence. 7 pairs of eyes turned to her with expressions ranging from shock to amusement to something that might have been respect. Chen stood up slowly, his 6-foot frame towering over Angela's 5'4". "You're fired. Clear out your locker and leave. Now." "Marcus," one of the investors started, "perhaps we should hear The meeting is over, Chen snapped. I don't pay people to serve coffee and pretend they understand complex financial instruments. Security! Angela set down the coffee pot with deliberate calm. She looked Chen directly in the eyes. Perhaps the first time she had ever truly looked at him. And he at her. Your model will trigger an SEC investigation within 6 months, she said quietly. When they trace the fraud back to this presentation, everyone at this table will be implicated. But you're right, Mr. Chen. I'm just a waitress. What could I possibly know? She walked away, her footsteps steady despite the trembling in her chest. Behind her, she heard the investors beginning to murmur, voices rising with concern. But she didn't turn back. That wasn't just embarrassment burning in her chest. That was pride finally waking up after 18 months of dormancy. Angela Mitchell had kept silent through every slight, every dismissive gesture, every moment of being treated as less than human. But watching someone destroy her work, corrupt her innovations, and use them to commit fraud, that was a line she couldn't watch anyone cross, not even to keep her job. 20 minutes later, the investors still lingered in the hotel restaurant, voices growing sharper with each passing moment. Marcus Chen had tried to restart his presentation, but the seed of doubt Angela had planted was growing into a forest of concerns. Marcus, who was that woman? Asked David Park, the senior partner from Andreessen Horowitz. She seemed to know what she was talking about. She's nobody, Chen insisted, pulling up new slides on his tablet. A disgruntled employee trying to sound important. Now, if we could return to the revenue projections, your hash rate calculations, interrupted Sandra Kim from Goldman Sachs. I want to see them again. The waitress mentioned something about exponential scaling. She's not a waitress anymore, Chen said through gritted teeth. And we're not going to derail a billion-dollar opportunity because some service worker threw around a few technical terms she probably Googled. But the damage was done. The investors were pulling out their phones, making calls to their technical advisors. Within minutes, 3 different CTOs were video calling into the meeting, reviewing Chen's blockchain model with fresh eyes. Meanwhile, Angela stood in the hotel's service corridor, cleaning out her small locker. 18 months of her life fit into a single canvas bag. A spare shirt, her mother's photograph, a notebook she used to jot down observations, and hidden at the very back, wrapped in plastic, her MIT doctoral diploma. Angela! Rosa, another waitress, rushed up to her. What happened? Everyone's saying you corrected Marcus Chen about computers or something? Angela managed a small smile. Something like that. But you're just... Rosa caught herself. I mean, how do you know about that stuff? For a moment, Angela considered telling her the truth. About the 3 degrees from MIT. About the 12 patents in her name. About how she had once been recruited by Tesla, SpaceX, and NASA in the same week. About how she had walked away from all of it. I read a lot, Angela said simply. As she walked toward the employee exit, her phone buzzed. An unknown number. She almost ignored it, but something made her answer. Miss Mitchell? The voice was older, authoritative. This is David Park from Andreessen Horowitz. I was in the meeting, you just interrupted. We've had our technical team review Mr. Chen's model, and you were right. It's not just wrong, it's fraudulent. We're pulling our investment immediately. Angela stopped walking. I see, but that's not why I'm calling, Park continued. How did you spot that? My CTOs needed 20 minutes and a computer to see what you apparently calculated in your head. Pattern recognition, Angela said carefully. No, Park said slowly. That was expertise, deep expertise, the kind that comes from years of study and practice. Miss Mitchell, who are you really? Without thinking, she spoke. I'm someone who made a choice, Mr. Park, and today I made another one. She hung up before he could respond. But as she pushed open the exit door, stepping into the morning sunlight, she felt something shift inside her chest. For 18 months, she had been sleepwalking through life, hiding her brilliance like a shameful secret. But the fire in her mind, the one that saw patterns and solutions and possibilities. It had never truly died. That wasn't just embarrassment or anger she felt. That was Dr. Angela Mitchell finally waking up. Her phone rang again. This time, it was a text from an unknown number. Your analysis was correct. Chen's model would have cost us $50 million. I need to know who you are. Sandra Kim, Goldman Sachs, then another. Please call me. We need someone with your skills. David Park, and another. I've been looking for you for 5 years. I know who you really are. We need to talk about your mother. VC, that last message made Angela's blood run cold. VC. She knew those initials, but it was impossible. Victoria Chen had no reason to know about Angela's mother, no reason to be looking for her. Unless Angela's mind raced back to a presentation she had given at MIT 5 years ago about inclusive technology and bridging the digital divide. There had been a woman in the audience, elegant, powerful, asking penetrating questions about the social applications of her work. The woman had introduced herself only as Victoria, a concerned philanthropist. Could it really be? In her studio apartment in East Oakland, Angela sat with a cardboard box she hadn't opened in 2 years. Her hands trembled as she lifted the lid, revealing a life she had tried to bury. On top was a framed photograph. Angela in her MIT doctoral robes, standing between her parents, her mother's proud smile radiant, despite the chemotherapy scarf wrapped around her head. Beneath that, stacks of journals, each one filled with algorithms, equations, and theoretical frameworks that had once been her entire world. She pulled out a leather-bound notebook, its cover worn from use. Inside, pressed between pages of quantum computing calculations, was a business card. Victoria Chen, Chen Foundation for Technological Equity. The pages were full of her life's work, not just the technical innovations that had earned her 3 degrees by age 27, but the vision she'd had for using technology to lift up underserved communities. She had been so close to launching her startup, Equitech, when the call came. Angie, baby, I didn't want to tell you. Her mother's voice on that October morning 3 years ago still echoed in her memory. Stage 4, the doctors say, maybe 6 months. The last time she touched these notebooks, she'd been making an impossible choice. The startup investors needed her full commitment. 80-hour weeks, constant travel, total dedication. But her mother needed her more. The experimental treatment at Johns Hopkins cost $30,000 a month, not covered by insurance. So Dr. Angela Mitchell, the MIT wunderkind who had been called the future of quantum computing by TechCrunch, had disappeared. She took the job at the Meridian Grand Hotel because it was walking distance from the hospital. She worked doubles to pay for treatments. She sat by her mother's bedside, reading her research papers aloud like bedtime stories. Her mother had lived not 6 months, but 2 years. 2 years bought with sacrifice, paid for with dreams deferred. She had passed 6 months ago, peacefully, with Angela holding her hand. But there was something else in the box. Something Angela had never understood. An envelope that had arrived the day after her mother's funeral, containing a single sheet of paper. Your mother's treatment has been paid in full. A grateful friend. Beneath it, a bank statement showing deposits totaling $400,000, covering not just the treatment, but all the medical debt. The donor was anonymous, traced only to a trust called the Morrison Recovery Fund. Morrison, her mother's maiden name. Angela opened her laptop, her fingers flying across the keyboard with the speed of someone remembering how to breathe. She pulled up corporate records, trust documents, following a digital trail she should have followed months ago. The Morrison Recovery Fund was administered by the Chen Foundation for Technological Equity. Victoria, Chen had been paying for her mother's treatment. But why? Angela's phone rang. The caller ID showed Meridian Grand Hotel. Miss Mitchell? It was James, the hotel manager. I need you to come back immediately. There's been a development. The investors are threatening to call the SEC. Mr. Chen is in serious trouble. And there's a woman here who says she's been looking for you. She says her name is Victoria Chen, and she claims she knows who you really are. Angela looked at the notebook in her hands, at the equations that had once defined her entire existence. She thought about the morning's confrontation, about the fire that had finally. "Tell Mrs. Chen I'll be there in 20 minutes, Angela said. "And James? Tell her I know about the Morrison Recovery Fund." There was a pause. "She said you would say that. She also said to tell you she's sorry it took so long to find you, and that your mother would be proud of what you did today." Angela stood, leaving the box of memories open on her table. She pulled out one thing, a USB drive containing her original blockchain framework, the complete version that Marcus Chen had bastardized. "There it is," she whispered to herself. It was always there. She had walked away from technology to save her mother. Now, perhaps, it was time to use technology to save something else, including Marcus Chen's company, whether he deserved it or not. The Meridian Grand Hotel was in chaos when Angela arrived at 11 p.m. The investors had gone, but the lights in the conference room blazed. Through the glass walls, she could see Marcus Chen pacing, his phone pressed to his ear. 3 lawyers huddled around a laptop. Angela entered through the service entrance, her footsteps silent on the familiar carpet. The kitchen staff nodded to her, confused but respectful. Word had spread about the morning's confrontation. She made her way to the business center, a small room with computers available for guest use. At this hour, it was empty. Angela inserted her USB drive and began to work. No hesitation. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, code flowing like water. She pulled up Chen's corrupted blockchain model from Nextech's public servers. "Sloppy security," she noted, and began to dissect it piece by piece. The foundation was there, buried under layers of mistakes and fraudulent modifications. Her original framework, the one she had published in the Journal of Distributed Computing, twisted into something unrecognizable. But she could see the bones of it, like an archaeologist recognizing the shape of ancient structures beneath centuries of earth. She began to rebuild. Line by line, algorithm by algorithm, she corrected the hash rate calculations, adjusted the consensus mechanisms, and most importantly, removed the illegal reporting loopholes that would have triggered federal investigation. But she didn't just fix it, she improved it. 3 years of watching, listening, and observing the tech world's evolving needs had given her new insights. She integrated solutions to problems the industry didn't even know it had yet. 2 hours later, she looked at the result. A blockchain framework that was not just legal and functional, but revolutionary. It could reduce transaction costs by 60%, increase processing speed by 300%, and most importantly, it included built-in compliance monitoring that would make fraud nearly impossible. Angela saved the file, then did something else. She embedded a digital signature, invisible to casual observation, but undeniable to any technical audit. Original Framework by Dr. Angela Mitchell, MIT. Corrections and improvements provided gratis to prevent investor fraud. For my mother, who taught me that integrity matters more than recognition. She uploaded the corrected model to Nextech's servers, replacing Chen's fraudulent version. Then she sent encrypted copies to every investor from the morning meeting, along with a detailed technical analysis of the fraud they had nearly funded and the solution now in place. There was nothing else to say. She quietly left the business center and walked toward the exit. Her phone exploded with notifications before she reached the door. "Who did this?" "Marcus Chen. This is brilliant. Please call immediately." Sandra Kim. "The new model just saved us from catastrophe." David Park. Within minutes, Nextech's development team was analyzing the code. Within an hour, they were calling it the most elegant blockchain solution they had ever seen. Someone found the embedded signature. Dr. Angela Mitchell, the lead developer whispered. The Angela Mitchell? She disappeared 3 years ago. Everyone thought she went to work for the NSA or something. The social media explosion was immediate. Shoot Find Angela Mitchell began trending. Tech Twitter went into overdrive. MIT's lost genius resurfaces to save billionaire CEO from his own fraud. Read one viral post. By sunrise, Angela Mitchell was the most searched name in technology. They pulled the security footage, and there she was, Angela Mitchell, sitting alone in the business center, saving a company whose CEO had fired her 12 hours earlier. That's the waitress, whispered Marcus Chen, staring at the screen in his office. The one you humiliated and fired, Victoria Chen finished. Entering the room, Marcus spun around to face his mother, shock evident on his face. Mom? What are you doing here? Cleaning up your mess, as usual, Victoria said coolly. Though this time, someone else did it for me. Someone remarkable. An hour later, Angela sat across from them in the hotel's executive boardroom. Her MIT diploma rested on the table, pulled from her apartment. The USB drive sat beside it, small but significant. Marcus couldn't meet her eyes. Victoria studied her with an intensity that would have been uncomfortable if Angela hadn't recognized something familiar in it. The look of one woman who had sacrificed for family to another. You want to know who I am, Angela said quietly. So I'll tell you. She spoke for 20 minutes, laying out her history without emotion. The early admission to MIT at 15, the 3 degrees, the breakthrough in quantum computing that had earned her international recognition, the startup that was going to revolutionize financial technology, and then the phone call, her mother's diagnosis, the impossible choice. I didn't leave technology, Angela said, looking directly at Marcus. Technology never left me. I just had to walk away for love. But the money, Marcus said, finally finding his voice. The treatments. How did you? She waited tables, Victoria interrupted. Double shifts. 7 days a week. She sold everything she owned. She was sleeping in her car when I found her. Angela turned to Victoria, the question evident in her eyes. Your mother and I were roommates at Howard, Victoria said softly. Before I married Marcus's father, before the money, before all of this. Diane Mitchell was my best friend. We lost touch when I moved to Silicon Valley, but I never forgot her. She pulled out a photograph, faded and worn. 2 young women in graduation robes, arms around each other, smiling at a future full of possibility. I saw your MIT presentation 5 years ago, Victoria continued. I recognized you immediately. You have your mother's eyes, her brilliance. I tried to reach out, but you had already disappeared. It took me 2 years to find you. By then, Diane was too proud to accept help directly. So I found another way. The Morrison Recovery Fund, Angela whispered. Your grandmother's maiden name. Diane would have known it was me. Marcus was staring between them, his usual arrogance completely shattered. You're telling me that the waitress I fired is not only a genius who saved my company, but she's also the daughter of your best friend? The woman you fired, Victoria corrected sharply, has more intelligence and integrity in her little finger than you've shown in your entire career. She could have let you crash and burn. She could have exposed your fraud to the SEC herself. Instead, she saved you. The question is, what are you going to do about it? Angela stood. Nothing. He's going to do nothing, because I don't need anything from him. I did this for the investors who would have been hurt, for the employees who would have lost their jobs. Not for him. Wait, Marcus said, standing as well. I was wrong. I was so wrong. The way I treated you. The way I treat... He stopped, seeming to see himself clearly for the first time. I'm sorry. That's inadequate, but I'm sorry. Your apology is noted, Angela said. She turned to Victoria. Thank you for helping my mother. I can't repay. You just did, Victoria said. You saved my son from prison. You saved his company. But more than that, you showed him who he really is. That's worth more than any amount of money. In that quiet office, Marcus Chen finally saw Angela Mitchell, not as a waitress, not even as a genius, but as a human being whose worth had nothing to do with her job title or bank account. The next morning, Angela stepped into the Meridian Grand Hotel like always, but something was fundamentally different. She had come to collect her final paycheck, but the lobby was packed with people. As she entered, the room fell silent. Then, starting from the back, a wave of applause. The kitchen staff, the housekeeping team, the other waitresses. Even the usually stoic concierge was clapping. But it wasn't just the service staff. The investors from yesterday's meeting were there. Tech executives she had served for months without recognition. They all stood, applauding. "You saved us," said David Park, stepping forward. The SEC confirmed that Chen's original model would have triggered immediate investigation. "We would have lost everything." "You're Dr. Mitchell," said one of the housekeepers, Maria, whom Angela had worked beside for over a year. "This whole time you were— Why didn't you tell us?" "Because it didn't matter," Angela said simply. "I was still the same person whether I was serving coffee or writing code. The only thing that changed was how you saw me." Later that afternoon, Nextech's board held an emergency meeting. Marcus Chen did something unprecedented. He stepped down as CEO, appointing Angela Mitchell as special technical advisor with full authority to restructure the company's blockchain division. Under one condition, Angela said when they offered her the position, Nextech creates a fund for its service workers to pursue education and technical training. Every janitor, every food service worker, every security guard gets access to fully paid courses and certification programs. You never know who's going to have the next breakthrough idea. The board approved unanimously. A week later, Angela stood in Stanford's largest auditorium, invited to give a special lecture on blockchain technology and ethical innovation. The room was packed. Students, professors, tech leaders, and, surprisingly, a large contingent of service workers from various Silicon Valley companies. She stepped up to the podium and looked out at the audience. "Everyone in this room has been served. Coffee by someone smarter than you realized," she began. "Everyone here has walked past brilliance dressed in a uniform. We live in a world that equates worth with wealth, intelligence with income, capability with credentials on display." She paused, making eye contact with Marcus Chen, who sat in the front row beside his mother. "I have 3 degrees from MIT. I've written papers that changed how we think about quantum computing. But for 18 months, I was invisible to most of you. My ideas didn't become more valuable when you learned about my education. They were always valuable. You just couldn't see it because I was holding a coffee pot instead of a laser pointer. The next time someone serves you, cleans your office, or fixes your computer, remember that genius doesn't always wear a suit. Brilliance doesn't always speak with confidence. Sometimes, the person who could solve your biggest problem is the one you've trained yourself not to see." "And to those who are invisible," she continued, her voice growing stronger, "your worth is not determined by whether others recognize it. Your dignity is not dependent on your job title. You are complete, valuable, and important exactly as you are. But never be afraid to speak truth when silence would cause harm. Never let anyone's blindness to your light convince you to dim it." The entire room stood. The applause was thunderous, but Angela noticed something more important. The service workers in the audience were crying. For perhaps the first time, they had heard someone with power say what they had always known. They mattered. Marcus Chen approached her after the talk. "I've restructured Nextech's entire corporate culture," he said. "Every employee, from the janitor to the CTO, now has equal access to speak in meetings. We've already had 2 breakthrough innovations from the mailroom." "That's a start," Angela said. "I know I can never truly make amends for how I treated you," Marcus continued. But I want you to know you've changed me. Fundamentally, I see people now. Really see them. Victoria Chen joined them, taking Angela's hand. Your mother would be so proud, not just of what you've achieved, but of who you've remained despite everything. Angela smiled, thinking of her mother's last words. Stay brilliant, baby, but more importantly, stay kind. She had done both. 6 months later, Angela Mitchell stood in the gleaming offices of her new company, Equitech, finally launched, with full funding from an unexpected consortium of investors led by Victoria Chen and David Park. But this wasn't the company she had envisioned 3 years ago. It was something better. Half of her employees were formerly invisible workers. The waitress with a chemistry degree who couldn't afford to finish her PhD, the janitor who taught himself coding through YouTube videos, the security guard who had innovative ideas about network protection, but no one to listen to them. Marcus Chen had become an unlikely ally, using his platform to promote what he called the Mitchell Principle, the radical idea that talent exists at every level of an organization, waiting to be recognized and nurtured. He had also legally changed Nextech's corporate charter to require that service workers be included in all innovation meetings. Angela kept her job at the Meridian Grand Hotel, just one shift a week, Sunday mornings. She served coffee to the same tech executives, but now they knew who she was. More importantly, they had started really seeing everyone who served them. Why do you still do it? A reporter asked her during a profile for Wired magazine. Because humility is not about being less than others, Angela replied. It's about understanding that no honest work is beneath anyone. I'm not a genius who was temporarily a waitress. I'm both. I'm all of it. We all are. The ripple effects were profound. Other tech companies began implementing invisible talent programs. Universities created scholarship funds specifically for service workers. The conversation about worth, dignity, and recognition had finally begun to shift. But for Angela, the greatest victory was smaller and more personal. Rosa, her former fellow waitress, had enrolled in community college to study computer science, funded by the Nextech education program. Maria, the housekeeper, had submitted a patent for an improved cleaning chemical formula she had been developing for years. James, the hotel manager, had started holding monthly innovation sessions where every employee, regardless of position, could present ideas. The world hadn't changed overnight, but in one corner of Silicon Valley, in one hotel, in one company, people had started to see each other, really see each other, and sometimes that's how all change begins. With one person brave enough to speak up, one moment of recognition, one act of choosing to see the light in someone else, especially when they've forgotten how to see it in themselves. Because genius isn't rare. It's everywhere, hiding in plain sight, waiting tables, mopping floors, and quietly saving the world, one algorithm at a time.